It was truly an out-of-body experience when I did it for the first time. I practiced for, I can't even tell you how many hours, 20 hours, 30 hours to play a 3-minute riff. And, I played it. I think I played it. I can't quite remember. I was kind of somewhere else when I was doing it, but I was actually disappointed when I finished. I was like, wow, I didn't play it exactly the way I wanted to, exactly the way I practiced. But, it didn't matter because it was the authenticity. It was the, willingness to put yourself out there. No one knew what the riff was supposed to sound like other than me because it was something I wrote. And everyone, was just blown away. Like, that was so amazing that you did that. And that was the only time that I've done it that I felt anxious and nervous and, oh my gosh. And every other time it was the most enjoyable experience.
I'm Brandon Vaidyanathan, and this is Beauty at Work, the podcast that seeks to expand our understanding of beauty, what it is, how it works, and why it matters for the work we do. This season of the podcast is sponsored by John Templeton Foundation and Templeton Religion Trust. Hello and welcome to Beauty at Work. As we try to figure out what to do with our lives, many of us are torn between conflicting passions. A common one is whether to pursue your artistic ambitions or something more practical that could make you money. But what if it's possible to integrate them? My guest today is a great example of someone who was able to do so. Andy Youniss is a founder and the former president and CEO of Rocket Software. He currently serves as the company's executive chairman and was the guiding force behind Rocket's innovation, acquisitions, partnerships, strategy, culture, and values since the company launched in 1990. He's also an accomplished pianist and guitarist and has opened for Aerosmith, Elton John, Maroon 5, Gwen Stefani, Elvis Costello, and others. In our conversation today, we talk about how he integrated his pursuit of music and software and how he accomplished what he was most deeply yearning for as he built his company. Let's get started. Hey, Andy, thanks for joining us on the podcast. It's such an honor to have you here.
It's so great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Well, to start, I would love it if you could share a story about an encounter with beauty that you had in your childhood. Any memory that lingers with you till today?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me something like this. So going back to my childhood, I guess the beauty story that I want to talk about is around music. I guess a little bit more than music, but I remember as a young child, I can't remember how old I was. My parents brought me to a musical theater production, happened to be at Catholic University in Hartke Theater. And it was a musical production of a series of fairy tales and fables. And I remember walking into the theater. It was kind of set up as a black box theater on either side of the theater, of the stage left and stage right, were scaffoldings and platforms and ladders, and on the different levels were musicians, guitar, bass, keyboard, drums. And the production started and they were kind of acting out these fables, but then they would introduce contemporary music. And it was the first time I really heard, live, amplified, powerful songs. I remember two distinctly. One was both by the Beatles. One was Good Day Sunshine and one was Here Comes the Sun. And just seeing that come alive with real people playing real instruments. I still, close my eyes and I can see that in front of me. I'm sure not completely accurately depicted, but just the beauty of the music, the power of the music, it just, it touched me so deeply. And obviously that's still with me today.
Wow. Well, did that influence you at all into pursuing music? I recall you had a story about a piano teacher and you didn't like practicing, and then you wanted to quit, and then somehow after quitting you really got into it. Could you connect these experiences a bit?
Yeah, so we grew up in a family, 3 sisters. We all took piano lessons. The piano teacher would come to our house. She would have given us pieces to work on all week. My sisters were very diligent in practicing, and they were proficient when they had to play in front of the teacher, I was not so diligent in practicing and did not enjoy the experience. I didn't enjoy the music that I was supposed to be practicing, the specific technique around it. But I love playing, but not in the way that she was teaching. And so I can't remember how long that went on, but I finally did convince my mother to let me quit playing or practicing and taking these lessons. But that was such a massive unlock for me, because at that moment I started to play kind of what I wanted, more contemporary music, and how I wanted, but really not being defined. It was more like I heard this something one way and I wanted to now reproduce it in a different way. And I say this to people, and it's quite accurate. Since that moment, I haven't stopped playing piano. I try to play, if not every day, almost every day. And it's been with me my entire life. And just that puzzle solving, to me, that ability to listen, figuring out somewhere in those 88 keys where it was, how it was. Today it's a lot easier because you can start up YouTube and actually watch people doing it. But way before that, it was listen, try it, listen, try it, just kind of this iteration, this loop, finally getting to the point where, hey, I think I've got this in a place that to me sounds really good.
Yeah. So was it just the sort of rigidity of the structure and like just, sort of rote imitation compared to the creative process of problem solving? Was that the distinction there? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think so. It was, I was listening to a podcast the other day on a totally different topic. But it was the discussion of technique versus task. And so, learning or thinking about the technique, focusing on the technique is kind of one way to get it done versus focusing on the task at hand, and kind of the technique comes along for free. And so I think looking, back then I didn't know really what it was, but as I reflect back on it, it's more of, the technique was not as interesting to me as the outcome. And if I could get to the outcome that I was looking for, kind of the technique, your fingers figure out what to do if you're trying to accomplish that sound or that chord or that syncopation. So I think that was the distinction for me.
Yeah. Talk a bit about your journey into software, because I recall you wanted to go into music as a kid, and how did you end up then pursuing a career in software?
So yeah, there was a point where I was seriously considering, do I study music or take a different path? And a physics professor at Catholic University, who was a good friend of the family, who also, had a hobby playing music, his recommendation was, music will always be with you. It's an amazing lifelong hobby, but you may want to consider pursuing something in the sciences. And I was always good at math. I was very interested in math. And in, my middle school years and high school, I happened to go to school that had access to computers. And so I was taking classes, back then, basic programming languages. So I really had an interest in it. It, similar to music, it kind of spoke to me right away. And when I attended Catholic University, I think it was my sophomore year, this computer science, program, the ability to actually graduate with a degree in computer science was, I was the first class that, that was offered to. And so I took a lot of math classes, but then I started taking more of the computer science curriculum and just, thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the whole, again, puzzle solving, I'm trying to get to a certain outcome. How can I get this machine to do what I want it to do? And, started getting summer internships in and around computer programming. And I know all this sounds silly today in this world that we all live in with so much technology around us, but it didn't exist back then in, the early 80s. And so I happened to find a internship at engineering company who had just bought a computer, and they wanted someone to figure out what to do with it. And so, and it happened to be my neighbor owned this engineering company and knew that I was interested in, computer science. And he's like, "Hey, we just bought one of these things. Can you come help?" And I just, got hooked on it, again, from a very early age.
How did you decide to venture into starting a company? Because that's a whole other thing from working on software to actually becoming an entrepreneur. Tell me about that journey.
So that was a unexpected journey. I didn't really set out to be an entrepreneur, but was working for a small company up here in Boston, and the owner of that company decided to sell to a larger corporation. So I became an employee of a larger corporation, but became frustrated very quickly because I had a lot of ideas for products to build. There were problems out there in the world that I knew that I could build software to solve. But I just remained a productive but frustrated employee of this larger company. But one of my colleagues approached me and said, "I know you're frustrated. I also know you have all these really good ideas. Why don't you start a company?" I'd recently got married. My wife, Marianne, was pregnant with our first child. So starting a company really wasn't part of the plan, but my colleague suggested and said that he would help get this thing started. And so I came home one day and said to Marianne, "What do you think about this idea? What if we start this software company?" And so that's how it started. It was just kind of an idea that I knew we could build some software that could solve some real problems for real customers. And someone kind of gave me this nudge, this shove, if you will, to start. And I was young, didn't know what I didn't know, but knew what I did know, and figured out how to build this software, and quickly got the first products sold. And that journey started 34 years ago. And you just learn as you go. If you're, I always tell people, if you're committed to it, and if you really are in it for the long term, and you're in it for the right things, which is, again, solving real problems, great things can happen along the way.
Amazing. Were there any moments during your career where you regretted not going more full-time into music?
Never regretted it. What I did was figure out a way to integrate my music life, the side of me that really gets positive energy from music, and bring that into my my work life, and bringing those two worlds together. I really never felt like I left music. It's always been part of me, but to then make it come alive in the context of my company. Yeah. And the, in the culture of the company, it was just another one of those aha moments that happened along the way. I mean, when I first started the company, I really put music to the background. It wasn't a big part of what I did. I still played guitar. I still played piano. It was still, part of kind of the family life, but not part of what I did, in my work life. But, I met one of our customers. I was having dinner with when I was out in Silicon Valley, and she said, "You know what? My husband's, got a studio behind our house, and it'd be great if you came over, and after dinner, we'd play music in the studio." And so one night we did that. We went out to the back house, we called it, and had an amazing night of playing music together. And it kind of clicked at that moment that you can integrate these two parts of your life where, you're talking about business and technology on the one hand, but you can connect with people through music. And, from that little spark, that little kernel, it's something that I ended up bringing everywhere I went, to all of our customers all around the world, all of different geographies. Playing music with people was such a, for me, authentic way to connect as human beings, as people.
Yeah. Do you have an example or a memory of that where it worked really well and then you found this moment of integration? Yeah.
I have so many examples. I mean, I'll give you one big and one small, but like the big example is our company would sponsor technical conferences. Technical conferences would be attended to by thousands of people. These conferences typically were in Las Vegas. That's where kind of everybody would gather. And, we spend the day in technical sessions, hour after hour after hour. But at night there'd be entertainment events, and we would typically, it would be an IBM conference, and IBM would bring in a big name entertainer, names that people would recognize. And so we would do this year after year. And, we got to the point where we'd done it enough where I would be the one on stage introducing the band that was coming on, welcoming everybody and introducing them to the band. And then, thought, how cool would it be if I stood up on stage and played the guitar, gave the guitar away to someone in the audience, and then introduced the band? Like, that would be a really fun thing to do, a really good way to connect with the audience in a different way than through the technical sessions during the day. And eventually, after multiple years of asking to do this, the production company said, all right, we'll let you do it. We'll give it a shot. And so I was able to stand up on stage at, a big arena in front of 10,000 people and play something that I wrote on the guitar, maybe a 3 to 5 minute guitar riff. And the positive feedback I got from that, from people who attended, who knew me as the CEO of Rocket, a computer scientist, a technician, an entrepreneur, but didn't know me as a musician, really, really, people came up to me and said, wow, like, you are a real person. You don't just sit up in your ivory tower. You're here putting yourself out in front of all of us. I was the only one on stage in front of all the people doing that. And so the amount of positive feedback I got from that, again, it still, resonates to this day. If I talk to customers, they remember each of those moments. You opened for Aerosmith, you opened for Elton John, you opened for Maroon 5, like these, and I'm not just name dropping, like, those are the people that, we would introduce, and people remember that to this day. Andy is the CEO who plays guitar. This, so that's a big example. And the small example is, wherever I went, whether it was Japan or India or all throughout Europe, just playing music with people, like sitting down, picking up a guitar. When I went to India, learning some Bollywood songs and just playing with people, in front of people. Music is global. Music is so human. Music translates across languages and cultures and geographies. And so, if I was a sculptor, maybe I'd sculpt with people. If I was a painter, I'd paint, but I'm a musician. And so I play music with people, and it really breaks down so many barriers and builds up all this connective tissue.
That's amazing. How did you feel like the first time you were in front of this large crowd playing the guitar by yourself? Was that challenging to do, difficult, or were you feeling at ease? How did you feel?
Extremely challenging, extremely difficult, anxiety provoking, surreal. It was not to get too deep, but it was truly an out of body experience when I did it for the first time. I practiced for, I can't even tell you how many hours, 20 hours, 30 hours to play a 3-minute riff. And, I played it. I think I played it. I can't quite remember. I was kind of somewhere else when I was doing it, but I was actually disappointed when I finished. I was like, wow, I didn't play it exactly the way I wanted to, exactly the way I practiced. But, it didn't matter, because it was the authenticity. It was the, willingness to put yourself out there. No one knew what the riff was supposed to sound like other than me, because it was something I wrote. And everyone, was just blown away. Like, that was so amazing that you did that. And that was the only time that I've done it that I felt anxious and nervous and, oh my gosh. And every other time, it was the most enjoyable experience.
Wow. Amazing. Talk a bit about creativity, both in music and in your work, because it seems like that's a big theme that runs through. It really seems to animate the work you do and who you are. So how does that work for you, both in your music and in your software business?
Yeah, no, I get so much energy from the creative process. Whether it's, creating music, I do a lot of, I write a lot of music, just channeling these ideas and then converting that to something that sounds the way I want it to sound, that creative process. And it's the parallels to computer programming is so similar, but it's more than programming. Like when I talk to a customer and try to understand what it is they're looking for, what problem are they trying to solve? Truly, I use the word empathy a lot, truly having empathy. What is it that, they're not finding a solution in the world for? And why haven't they found a solution? What hasn't worked before? And what is it that they are, will make them, satisfied, make them happy? Listening to that and then creating something that delivers to their expectation is really why I have done what I've done for so many years, because I love doing that. I love listening, understanding, and then figuring out a way to solve that problem. The satisfaction that I see from them when they, when I deliver it, or if I get it wrong, like if I get it wrong, that's such motivation to go back and try it again, do it differently. That human connection through satisfaction is such a key driver to, people ask me, why are you still doing this after all these years? Why are you still building software and trying to solve these problems? I love that aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the aspects of software that people I've talked to associate with beauty is coding. So like the elegance of code and the way in which you can solve a problem in a way that that intrinsically has some sort of structuring to it that's quite beautiful. Could you talk about what beauty means in your world and in the software world?
Yeah, and it's so true. There's beauty on so many different layers. I remember the first job I had out of college, and again, this will be so foreign to people, but you would write your code and then you would print your code out on paper, and that's how you would start to debug your code. You'd look through it. It'll sound odd to people, but the beauty of what that code looked like on paper, the way that it's formatted and spaced and indented, and you can write code that looks really messy, or you can write code that looks really beautiful. And I'm just talking about the aesthetics of looking at it. Like that's one level. Another level is just the beauty of the algorithms. Like I can figure out how to do this in a more efficient way. I could brute force it, or I could come up with a more efficient algorithm, and then I can convert that into really efficient code. That's another layer of beauty. There's the beauty of the performance of the code. I can get this code to perform much more efficiently. I can measure that. And that's something that, again, I get immense pleasure from. There's the beauty of what it looks like to the user of the software. How does this program, this application expose itself? How does it interact with the user? And so I find beauty at every single one of those layers. And then when you convert that into a company that doesn't have just one product, it has multiple products, and then those products fit together in a family, and those families fit together in businesses. And then there's a beauty on how you bring that to market. I mean, I don't know, I could keep go on and on, but you get the sense that the beauty of it is there and is really just driving me at every step of the way.
Hey everybody, that's a great stopping point for the first half of our conversation. Stay tuned for the second half next week, where Andy talks about the beauty of culture and why getting culture right is crucial for organizational success. He'll also say more about the deeper longings that have fueled his pursuit. To make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already, and please leave us a review. We'd love to hear what you think about the show.